Anna here is a 28-year-old attorney. From the tumult of my childhood, a past I kept locked up even from those closest to me, my life now is a far cry. The ring of my phone broke the calm in my workplace. The show displayed an unfamiliar number, yet something about it felt eerily familiar. I hesitantly responded with a hand. "Anna speaking," I said, sounding a mix of caution and professionalism. The voice said, "Anna, it's your father," with a nervousness that did nothing to ease my growing anxiety. A cold passed through me. I had not heard that voice in more than 10 years, a voice that once represented love and protection, but now stood for misery and betrayal. "Why are you phoning me?" My angry words sliced through the quiet that followed his introduction. "I'm in financial problems, Anna. I need your help," he replied, his voice faltering a little. Though honest, his plea set off a burning of bitterness in me. "Your assistance." "Right now. You want me after all these years?" I answered, incredulity and resentment blending in my voice. "Indeed, if it weren't critical, I wouldn't ask. I'm truly in a problem," he said, desperation tipping into his voice. "You long ago quit being my father. You cannot just call me now and expect me to help," I said, my voice icy and uncompromising. The line stopped in thick quiet that seemed like an unbridgeable gap. "Anna, kindly, still your dad," he added, a weak attempt at rekindling a link long gone. The word dad seemed alien, nearly shocking. "Dad?" Years of buried rage and hurt found their way into my voice as I exclaimed, "You lost that title when you chose her over me." "You are the daughter of ours," I considered. "You thought wrong," I said, cutting him off in middle sentence. "You made your decision years ago. Today I have made mine." His voice carried a mix of desperation and begging. "Anna, I apologize. I only need just one favor." In my office, the word sorry seemed empty and useless. "Sorry doesn't alter the past." I hung up firmly and said, "I cannot help you." Love and joy abound throughout my early years before the age of 10, a monument to the great existence my parents and I led in our modest rented house. Our days were blessed with warmth and our evenings with dreams and stories thanks to my mother, a lighthouse of love and happiness. Once a light-hearted and kind man, my father would spend evenings teaching me little worldly lessons or playing games with me. Every day was an adventure and every night a pleasant dream in our house, which resembled a cocoon of contentment. But with my mother's sudden death, our happy life came to a sharp stop. Once echoing laughter and joy, the mansion became a silent cemetery of memories. I recall me strolling throughout the rooms, every nook a sharp reminder of her absence. Not only did I find the loss intolerable, but my father also lost the love of his life, but the intensity of his loss seemed to fade fast, which confused and disappointed me. In a few months, he returned home with Marissa, a woman destined for major influence in our life. I remember the day he first brought her, a day marking the end of my beloved childhood. "Anna, this is Marissa. She will be staying with us," my father said one evening, his voice lacking the tenderness I was so used to. Looking up at her, I searched for a trace of friendliness or motherly warmth, but came nowhere. She was imposing, her eyes steely and exact. I felt a change in the air from the first moment, a change that drove an inexplicable terror within me. "Hello, Anna," Marissa responded, her voice fluid but devoid of any passion. Her grin seemed to conceal something dark under its surface, not to be consoling. The house felt different in the next days, as though the walls themselves were withdrawing from her presence. The happy recollections of the past appeared to dissipate, replaced by a residual anxiety that permeated every inch. I recall looking at Marissa in search of something positive or decent about her, but her every glance and motion appeared to be tinged with an implicit resentment. She was obviously here to create a new story, one in which I was an undesired participant, not to cover the gap my mother left. Couldn't help but feel as though her presence marked the start of something sinister as I watched her wander our once safe and joyful house. Her staring at me with eyes that seemed to conceal more than they exposed suggested poor future prospects. The days after Marissa arrived felt like waking from a dream I couldn't get clear from. Once filled with my mother's laughter and affection, the house seemed chilly and unwelcome. Marissa's presence shadows everything and makes even the most basic daily activities a sequence of challenges. My breakfast tasted somewhat salted one morning as I sat down. "Marissa, did you overdone the salt in this?" I inquired, my voice unsure. "Oh, did I? It has to have been a mistake. Just devour it, Anna. Don't be so finicky," she said, her tone contemptuous, perhaps sarcastic. The incidents were more regular and vicious. I recall discovering destroyed clothes during a laundry session. "Marissa, every one of my outfits has faded. What transpired?" "One day," I inquired, holding up my once favorite dress, now faded and unworkable. She looked at it, then shrugged apathetically. "Maybe the washing machine is acting up, or maybe it's time you stopped wearing such young clothes." Though I was frustrated, I knew arguing would only make matters worse. Feeling powerless, I looked to my father, expecting he would be able to see through her front. "Dad, Marissa is messing about with my stuff. She is usually nasty to me," I murmured one evening, my voice quivering with a mix of grief and rage. The way my father responded far from what I had hoped for. "Anna, your imagination is running wild. Marissa is making every effort to fit our family." "Stop messing about," he shouted sharply, his words cutting right through. I objected, "But Dad, it's the truth." But he wouldn't hear. "That's enough, Anna. I want no more of your charges," he said, his voice growing in fury. Every day was a fight, negotiating Marissa's resentment and my father's apathy. Once a haven, the house felt like a jail now. Spending more time in my room, I sought solace from the continuous tension in the air. Living in that house of horrors, I felt alienated and misinterpreted. Fear and worry replaced the comfort and contentment that before permeated those walls. Every day I yearned for the past, for the times when my mother's smile lit the whole room, a sharp contrast to the gloom that now permeated every corner. Living with Marissa became a daily struggle of survival and avoidance. Her contempt of me progressed from verbal barbs to actual violence. It began gently, a twist on my tummy or a pinch on my arm, always in areas readily hidden under my clothing. The suffering was acute, a nasty reminder of my powerlessness in her company. Always on her location in the home, I devised plans to avoid her. I would wait till she was busy or travel great distances to my room. Though I tried, there were occasions when she surprised me, and those times always brought some kind of hurt. One day, Marissa walked in, and for no apparent reason, gripped my arm firmly while I was silently reading in the living room. Her nails dug into my skin. I bit back any cry of protest, even though I hurt. She turned to face me with a chilly, triumphant smile, then left. Grandma observed my careful motions and the way I flinched when Marissa's voice rang over the house on one of her rare visits. "Anna, is everything all right at home?" Grandma asked with worried voice. My heart wanting to tell her the truth, I stared at her, but held back by fear and the need to shield her from concern. "Absolutely, Grandma, everything is good. Only a lot of homework," I said, forcing a grin for her. She looked uncertain but did not press on. Though I felt guilty about lying to her, I couldn't stand to consider upsetting her. I watched Marissa from the window that evening as Grandma went, her look one of gratification. She seemed to enjoy the authority she possessed over me, that she could harm me and get away with it. Her victorious appearance made it very evident that she was in charge. I was merely a powerless participant in her warped game. Feeling caught in an abuse and silent cycle, I withdrew to my room. Marissa's pinches and twists caused physical suffering that was tolerable compared to the emotional torment I experienced. School turned to become my haven, where I could momentarily flee the suffering of my personal life. Still, the shadows of my domestic conflicts started to leak through. Mrs. Thompson, my teacher, a gentle woman who always pushed her students, began to see changes in me. She softly touched my wrist one day as I turned in my homework, her eyes drawn to the bruises on my arm. "Anna, what occurred here?" "These seem like bruises," she replied, her voice tinged with sympathy. I drew back my arm fast, hiding the bruises under my sleeve. "Mrs. Thompson, nothing at all. I simply dropped while playing," I said, dodging her look. Mrs. Thompson did not seem persuaded. "Anna, you can let me know whether something seems off or whether someone is mistreating you. Speaking out is crucial," she advised, her eyes darting across mine, seeking the truth. I wanted to share with her everything about Marissa and how I lived under continual anxiety, but the words never would come. Rather, I started to smile under duress. "Really, Mrs. Thompson, I'm good. It was simply a dumb mistake." She looked at me carefully, then nodded gently. "All well, Anna, but keep in mind my door is always open. You're not alone," she murmured, smiling reassuringly. I nodded, lumps developing in my throat. Her compassion made it more challenging to keep up the front of everything was okay. Mrs. Thompson's comments kept coming back to me as I strolled home that day. I was both quite lonely from bearing my responsibilities alone and appreciative of her attention. The idea of coming clean about my situation at home was horrific. I worried about the fallout. What Marissa may do should she learn I had told someone. I was silent at supper that evening, immersed in contemplation over Mrs. Thompson's offer of assistance. Marissa became aware of my quiet. "Anna, why so quiet tonight? Cat caught your tongue," she asked with a sarcastic voice. I just shook my head and carried on eating, trying to make myself as tiny and invisible as I could. As I lay in bed after supper, the reality of my circumstances seemed more daunting than it had ever been. Mrs. Thompson's worries had taught me that people did care, but my silence was brought on by my fear of what truth-telling revealed. Every day I balanced my need to tell someone with my fear of Marissa's reprisals. Anxiety and dread for me permeated the day my teacher, Mrs. Thompson, chose to involve my father. Fidgety in the principal's office, my mind racing with anxiety about my father's response. When he did arrive, his face was austere, and his eyes revealed a mixture of contempt and shame. "What's this regarding Anna? Why am I being called to your school like this?" he demanded, his voice sharp as he moved in. Seeking some kind of support, I looked at Mrs. Thompson. I attempted to find my voice while swallowing deliberately hard. Mrs. Thompson saw. She saw the bruises. I mumbled under his weight. He interrupted before I could go on, clearly angry. "Bruises? Your topic is what? Are you once more fabricating stories?" Mrs. Thompson intervened, her voice forceful but understated. "Mr. Smith, Anna's general welfare worries me. Her arm's injuries seem not to be accidental. We have to talk about this." Anger made my father's face a shade darker. "At home, she is quite safe. Anna, are you misleading others about our family?" He turned straight toward me, clearly disappointed. The tears I had been stifling began to flow. "Dad, it's not lying. Marissa, she's been hurting me," I said, the truth at last rising. His answer was one of complete incredulity. "Marissa? That is ludicrous. She has been only friendly to you. I won't have you denigrating her with these charges." "But, Dad, the fact is this." Desperate for his belief in me, I shouted out. He got up suddenly, his tolerance fraying. "Not enough of this. Tell Mrs. Thompson you distorted everything." I turned to the teacher under orders and repeated his statements. She nodded back but spoke nothing. When he got home without saying anything further, he locked me in my room. Marissa's voice, slinking with phony worry, came through the door. "She's just seeking attention, I told you," she added. Feeling great loneliness and hopelessness, I sat on my bed, One person I considered I could always trust on had turned away from me. Once feeling like my personal refuge, the walls of my chamber suddenly seemed to be those of a jail. "What is this about, Anna? Why am I called to your school in this manner?" he ordered, his voice crisp as he moved in. I looked at Mrs. Thompson in search of some encouragement. Swallowing hard, I sought my voice. "Dad, Mrs. Thompson saw. She saw the bruises," I mumbled under the weight of his eyes on me. He interrupted, his wrath evident before I could go farther. "Bruised? You're talking about what? Are you once more creating stories?" Mrs. Thompson intervened, her voice cool but forceful. "Mr. Smith, Anna's general state worries me. Her arm's bruises don't seem like accident. We have to deal with this." Anger caused my father's features to darken somewhat. "She feels absolutely protected at home. Anna, are you misleading others about our family?" He turned directly toward me, clearly disappointed. I started to let the tears I had been suppressing flow. "It's not lying, Dad. Marissa, she's been hurting me," I said, the truth at last showing up. His response was one of complete incredulity. "Marissa, that is outrageous. She has been just friendly to you. I won't have you disparaging her with these charges." "But Dad, it's the truth." Desperate for his belief in me, I yelled. He got up suddenly, his tolerance running thin. "Enough of this. Tell Mrs. Thompson you misrepresented everything." I turned to the teacher exactly as instructed and repeated his remarks. She nodded back but said nothing at all. When he got home, without saying anything, he locked me in my room. I could hear Marissa's voice dripping with phony worry coming through the door. "I told you she's just seeking attention," she added. Feeling a great degree of loneliness and hopelessness, I sat on my bed. One person I considered I could always rely on had turned away from me. Once like my personal refuge, the walls of my chamber now seemed like those of a prison. My granny showed up the following day. Though little in stature, her presence dominated the room. She faced my father with an unexpected strength. "John, I am bringing Anna along," she said resolutely. "She is not safe here." Surprised, my father tried to object. "Mom, you cannot just take her. She is my daughter." "Your daughter whom you failed to guard," she said harshly. I would not stand by and watch her suffer. Marissa sought to get in between. "She is only a young child creating stories. You cannot believe her over us." Grandma looked hard, then turned to Marissa. "When I see a fearful child, I know one. Anna is accompanying me. Should you try to stop me, I will send this information to the authorities." Realizing he was outmatched, my father stopped opposing further. Marissa's look changed from rebellious to defeated as I got ready. Walking out of the house with my grandma, I felt a weight off my shoulders. I felt safe for the first time in months. Though the automobile trip to Grandma's was silent, her presence was consoling. She turned to me once we were here and said, "You're secure now, Anna. You should not worry any more." I discovered the security and love lacking in my life in my grandmother's house. It was a refuge where I might recover and get back strong. Her loving abode and the frigidity of my father's house contrasted sharply. I felt like I could breathe once again, free from the dread and terror that had dogged me for the first time in a very long time. Since I moved in with my grandma from my father's place, years had gone by. Her house had been a haven, a kind and healing place. But time, as it does, progressed and carried with it still another wave of transformation. My dear grandmother died, leaving an emptiness that felt unfillable. My father and Marissa came up to the burial. Their expressions reflected a mix of forced grief and ill-disguised enthusiasm. They were obviously more concerned in what they could get from her death than in grieving her loss. Marissa lost no time gathering at my grandmother's house following the funeral. "Well, Anna, I guess right now you'll be looking for somewhere to reside. Your father owns this house and everything within it," she remarked, her voice slightly tinted with a barely hidden joy. Agreeing, my father looked about the room as though he already knew what to do with the house. I started to smile, a response they seemed to find confusing. "Actually, that's where you're wrong," I responded, surprised by my certainty. "What do you mean?" my father questioned, his face turning to one of perplexity. I inhaled deeply to appreciate the occasion. Grandma passed a will. Watching as their emotions shifted from uncertainty to horror, I said, "She bequeathed the house and a large sum of money to me." "Still, you are only a child. This is your father. Any bequest you get should be under my control." My father sputtered, his entitlement obvious. Marissa answered, her voice sharp, "Your father will manage your property until you come of age." Their responses were quite funny. "You hardly show any concern for me that would have you wishing me a happy birthday. 1 month ago I turned 18. Now, legally, I am an adult. I make my own judgments," I said, enjoying a look of insight flashing across their features. Shock gave way to fury, then to a kind of frantic pleading in my father's face. "Anna, you are incapable of doing this. Your family is here with us." I studied them, memories of my early years coming back. My voice firm, "You stopped being my family a long time ago." Marissa moved forward, her voice imploring now. "At least allow us to remain in the house. There's nowhere else we could go. We have not extended the lease on our residence." I nodded my head. "These days, this is my residence. You have to look somewhere else." Years of suffering and neglect seemed to weigh less on my shoulders as they went. Feeling closure, I stood in the house that was now mine and surrounded with memories of my grandmother's affection. Though the echoes of the past persisted, today I was free. With phone in hand, I sat there experiencing a range of emotions: anger, betrayal, and a sense of injustice. Still, behind all that there was a sense of strength, a memory of the resiliency that had got me through the worst of times.
Hi, I'm Olivia Carter. I'm 25, fresh out of college with an art degree, and sitting on a trust fund that could make most people's heads spin. But here's the twist. I've got big dreams of making it as an artist on my own terms. No handouts, no shortcuts. Just me, my brushes, and a whole lot of determination. Life was looking pretty sweet when I moved in with my fiancé, Mark, into this fancy suburban neighborhood where every house looked straight out of a magazine. One day, Mark was practically bouncing with excitement. "Babe, you've got to meet my mom," he said, grinning. "She's dying to get to know you better." I had no idea that meeting would be the start of something I couldn't have seen coming. Enter Evelyn, my future mother-in-law. Imagine the perfect suburban mom, but with eyes that could slice through steel. She greeted me with open arms and a smile that didn't quite meet those razor-sharp eyes. "Olivia, darling," she said, air-kissing my cheeks. "Mark has told me so much about you. We simply must have lunch and get to know each other better." I nodded, though I couldn't shake the feeling that she was sizing me up. "Sounds great, Mrs. Thompson." "Oh, please," she laughed, "call me Evelyn. We're practically family now." In the weeks that followed, Evelyn was everywhere, dropping by unannounced, calling at all hours, always with that same plastic smile and endless questions. "So, Olivia," she'd say sweetly, "Mark mentioned you have quite the nest egg tucked away. How fortunate." I brush it off with a laugh. "Oh, just something for art school." But Evelyn wouldn't let it go. One day, during lunch at an overpriced cafe, she leaned in close. "You know, dear, in this family, we believe in sharing our blessings. Have you ever thought about how your fund could benefit us all?" I nearly choked on my avocado toast. "I'm sorry, what?" She patted my hand, all motherly. "Oh, I'm just thinking out loud. But with Mark's business ventures and my charity work, we could really make that money work for us." Alarm bells went off in my head, but I pushed them aside. This was Mark's mom. Surely she couldn't be serious. Things came to a head one night when Mark dropped a bombshell. "Babe, I've been thinking," he began. "Why don't we open a joint account? You know, pool our resources." I froze. "Why?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He shrugged, looking too casual. "Just seems like the smart thing to do. We're getting married after all. A knot tightened in my stomach. Mark, you know my trust fund is for art school. He gave me a pleading look. Don't you trust me? There it was, the guilt trip. With a sigh, I gave in. Fine, but just for household stuff. Okay. He grinned, pulling me into a hug. You're the best. I love you. But as I hugged him, a sinking feeling settled in my chest. I couldn't shake the sense that I had just made a huge mistake. I should have known something was wrong when I couldn't access our joint account online. Panicked, I went to the bank. I'm sorry, Miss Carter, the teller said. There seems to be an issue with your account. My heart dropped. What kind of issue? She hesitated. There have been several large withdrawals recently. Your balance is significantly lower than it should be. How much lower? I asked, barely able to speak. When she showed me the number, I felt sick. Almost everything was gone. I rushed home to find Mark slumped on the couch, looking miserable. Where's the money, Mark? He flinched. Liv, I can explain. Explain what? How you drained our account without telling me. He ran his hands through his hair, looking desperate. I messed up, okay. I got in too deep, the casinos, the cards. I thought I could win it back. Casinos? Cards? What are you talking about? That's when it all came out, his hidden gambling addiction, the massive debts to dangerous people. They're going to hurt me, Liv, he begged. I need help. We need to use your trust fund. I stared at him horrified. Are you out of your mind? That's my future you're talking about. Before he could respond, the front door flew open and Evelyn swept in like a storm. Oh good, you're both here, she said, completely unfazed. Now, Olivia dear, let's talk about accessing that trust fund of yours. I gaped at her. You knew about this? She waved it off, like it was nothing. Of course I knew. I always know what's best for this family. Now how quickly can we get that money transferred? I exploded. Are you kidding me? I'm not giving you a cent. This is insane. Evelyn's smile vanished, her eyes turning cold. Don't be difficult, dear. This is for Mark's safety, for the good of the family. I laughed bitterly. Family? Is that what you call this? Lying, stealing, manipulating. Without another word, I turned to leave. Evelyn's grip tightened on my arm, her nails digging into my skin. You ungrateful little brat. She spat through clenched teeth. After everything we've done for you. I yanked my arm free. Don't touch me, I snapped. I'm out of here. I turned toward the door, but before I could reach it, everything went black. When I came to, the air was cold and damp, my head pounding. Darkness surrounded me. As my eyes adjusted, I realized where I was, the basement, and the door was locked. Panic surged through me as I pounded on the door, shouting, "Let me out." From the other side, Evelyn's voice came, eerily calm. Olivia, this is for your own good. Take some time to think about your priorities. We'll let you out when you're ready to cooperate. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, locked in a basement by my future mother-in-law. It felt like some kind of twisted nightmare. Days blurred together. They brought food and water, always accompanied by Evelyn's false sweetness or Mark's desperate pleas. Mark would come down, his face pale and drawn. Liv, you don't understand, he'd say, his voice trembling. These guys, they're serious. They'll kill me if I don't pay them. But no matter how much he begged or threatened, I stood my ground. There was no way I was giving them my trust fund. By the third day, I was losing it, cabin fever setting in fast. Then I remembered my phone. Zoe, my best friend from college. Years ago, we'd come up with this ridiculous emergency code. I just had to hope she'd remember it. When Mark came down again, I played my part. Water, I croaked weakly. Please. He hesitated but then nodded, starting to turn away. Can I at least have my phone? To play some music. To my surprise, he agreed. The moment I had the phone in my hand, I sent Zoe a text. Just 3 emojis. A house, a basement, and an SOS. I prayed she'd understand. Hours passed. Then suddenly, a commotion erupted upstairs, shouting, heavy footsteps. Police, open up. The basement door flew open and light flooded in, blinding me. Strong arms lifted me as officers carried me up and out of the basement. As I stumbled into the sunlight, I caught sight of Evelyn and Mark, both handcuffed, being led to police cars. The shock on their faces would have been satisfying if I wasn't so overwhelmed. Everything after that was a blur, Paramedics checking me over. Police asking questions, my parents rushing to my side, tearful and shaken. Oh, sweetie, my mom sobbed, hugging me tight. We were so worried. My dad's face was grim. They won't get away with this, Olivia. I promise you that. At the hospital, a detective with kind eyes sat beside my bed. Miss Carter, I know this is hard, but we need to understand what happened. I took a deep breath and told him everything. The manipulation, the joint account, their constant pressure for my trust fund. He listened carefully, then spoke softly. I'm afraid this goes beyond just you. We've uncovered evidence of multiple victims. My heart sank. Others? How many? More than a dozen so far. Young women, all with substantial assets. You're the first to escape. The weight of it crashed down on me. I wasn't alone, but that didn't bring much comfort. Weeks passed in a blur of statements, meetings with lawyers, and therapy sessions as I tried to piece my life back together. Trust, once shattered, felt impossible to rebuild. One afternoon, sitting in my therapist's office, I finally broke down. How could I have been so stupid? I sobbed. Dr. Ramirez leaned forward, her voice gentle but steady. Olivia, you're not stupid. You were the victim of skilled manipulators, but you're also a survivor. I want to fight back, I told my lawyer one day. Not just for me, but for everyone they hurt. He nodded, a determined glint in his eyes. We'll hit them where it hurts, through their assets, and we'll make sure they never do this to anyone else. As I left his office, a plan began to form in my mind. I caught a glimpse of myself in a window, and for the first time in months, I saw a spark of the old Olivia. You messed with the wrong artist, I muttered, a grim smile spreading across my face. The Thompsons thought they could back me into a corner, but they had no idea I was about to create my masterpiece, and I was calling it justice. Turns out, Evelyn's so-called charity work was as charitable as a loan shark in a soup kitchen. With the help of a badass financial investigator named Sam, we uncovered a web of fraud so intricate it made my head spin. Look at this, Sam said one day, pointing at her computer screen. Evelyn's been cooking the books for years. Fake donations, inflated expenses, the works. I leaned in, my artist's eye catching the patterns in the numbers. It's like a twisted masterpiece of greed. Sam nodded grimly, and we're going to dismantle it, piece by piece. One afternoon, while grabbing coffee, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Local businessman arrested in connection with organized crime ring. There he was, my ex-fiancé, being led away in handcuffs. I should have felt satisfaction, but all I felt was a hollow ache. Guess those business ventures weren't so legit after all. Huh, Mark. I muttered to my phone. But the real fireworks came when Evelyn's empire began to crumble. It was like watching a house of cards collapse in slow motion. First, her friends started distancing themselves. Then came the whispers and the pointed looks. Did you hear about Evelyn Thompson? I overheard someone saying at my favorite coffee shop. They say she's been stealing from her own charities. I sipped my latte, hiding a smirk. If only they knew. As satisfying as it was to see the Thompsons face justice, I knew I had to do more. Their victims, people like me, needed help. That's how the Phoenix Foundation was born. At our first support group meeting, I looked around the room, seeing the pain and determination in each face. We're not victims anymore, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. We're survivors, and together we'll make sure no one else goes through what we did. The months flew by. Between managing the foundation and diving back into my art, I barely had time to breathe. But for the first time in ages, I felt free. Art school was everything I dreamed of and more. My painful experiences fueled my creativity in ways I never expected. My first gallery showing featured a series called Broken Trusts, abstract pieces that spoke of betrayal and resilience. This is powerful stuff, Olivia, my professor said, studying an intense piece. You've really found your voice. I nodded, thinking of how far I'd come. Sometimes you have to go through the fire to forge something beautiful. It was a lazy Sunday morning when I saw it. Curled up on my couch, scrolling through the news on my tablet, a headline caught my eye. Thompson family empire collapses, matriarch faces decades in prison. I read the article, emotions swirling in my chest. Evelyn had been sentenced to 20 years for fraud and embezzlement, and Mark was looking at 10 years for his connections to organized crime. Their assets were seized, their reputation in ruins. Part of me wanted to celebrate, to call up Zoe and pop champagne, But as I looked around my sunlit apartment at the half-finished canvas in the corner and the pile of thank you notes from Phoenix Foundation members, I realized something. I didn't need their downfall to validate my success. I had risen above their betrayal, created something meaningful, and found real, genuine connections. That was the sweetest revenge of all. Setting down my tablet, I picked up my paintbrush. A new piece was forming in my mind, not of broken trust or betrayal, but of hope and new beginnings. And that's the end of Olivia's journey, from betrayal to triumph. Now I have a question for you. If you were in Olivia's shoes, would you have pursued legal justice against your abusers or walked away to focus solely on your own healing? There's no right answer, but your choice says a lot about how you view forgiveness, justice, and personal growth. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Hey, I'm Aria Johnson, your not-so-average 18-year-old senior from the suburbs of Chicago. Sure, I've got the grades 4.0 GPA, but what really sets me apart? My determination to get into Northwestern and study journalism. It's been my dream for as long as I can remember. Aria, have you finished that college essay yet? My mom, Linda, called from the kitchen one night. I glanced up from my laptop, eyes bleary. Almost done, just putting the final touches on it. My dad, George, popped his head in, grinning. That's my girl. Keep up the great work. They were supportive for sure, but sometimes I'd catch them sharing these strange, anxious glances when they thought I wasn't looking, like they knew something I didn't. Balancing school and my part-time job at Cafe Grind wasn't easy, but I powered through. College isn't cheap, and I was determined to make it. My best friend Tyler popped by the cafe one day and asked, "Yo, Aria, how's the college grind?" I rolled my eyes. I'm drowning in applications and essays, but I'm not giving up. That's why you're going to crush it. You've got this, he said with a grin. Later that week, my boyfriend Marcus surprised me at work. You look stressed, he said, leaning over the counter. Everything all right? Just the usual college panic, I sighed. Sometimes I wonder if it's even worth it. Marcus took my hand, his eyes softening. Are you kidding? You're the smartest person I know. Northwestern won't know what hit them. Their support meant everything. I had no idea how much I needed soon. It was a Thursday when everything changed. I came home to flashing lights and police cars parked outside. My heart dropped. Miss Johnson, an officer approached me, his face serious. There's been an accident. Your parents, they didn't make it. The world shattered around me. Just like that, they were gone. A weekend trip that ended in tragedy. The next few days were a blur of funeral arrangements and endless paperwork. I moved in with Aunt Sarah, who tried her best to be strong for both of us. Aria, honey, she said one night, her voice breaking. What about your college plans? I wiped away tears. I don't know, Aunt Sarah. But I can't give up now. Mom and Dad wouldn't want that. So I threw myself into applications, scholarships, and extra shifts at the cafe. Anything to keep my dream alive. You sure you're okay? Tyler asked one day at school. I nodded, unable to speak. Marcus was there too, always with a hug when I needed it. You're the strongest person I know, Aria. You've got this. But something gnawed at me, like there was more to my parents' story. I couldn't shake the feeling that they were hiding something, if only I knew how right I was. 2 years into Northwestern, and I was barely hanging on. Between classes, my job at the campus bookstore, and weekend shifts at Joe's Diner, I was running on fumes. Aria, you look like death warmed over, my roommate Zoe said one morning as I chugged my third cup of coffee. Thanks, I muttered. Just what every girl wants to hear. Kevin, my study buddy from journalism ethics, chimed in. You're going to burn out, Aria. Take a break. But I couldn't. Every time I thought about slowing down, I remembered my parents. They'd never see me graduate, and that kept me going, even when I was dead on my feet. Then came that night at Joe's. It was slow, just me and Eddie, the night cook. I was wiping down tables when the bell above the door jingled. Welcome to Joe's, I said automatically, turning around, and froze. Standing there, as if they hadn't been dead for years or my parents. I blinked, sure I was hallucinating. But no, it was them. Older, dressed differently, but unmistakably George and Linda Johnson. They didn't see me at first, too busy arguing in hushed tones as they ordered coffee to go. When they turned to leave, my dad's eyes met mine. He paled, grabbing my mom's arm. "George, what's wrong?" she asked, before following his gaze and spotting me. Oh my God. I finally found my voice. "Mom? Dad? How are you alive?" They bolted. I chased them into the parking lot, my mind reeling. "Wait. Stop. How could you do this?" My dad turned, his face stricken. "Aria, we can explain. Explain faking your deaths, abandoning me." My mom stepped forward, her face filled with regret. "We were in trouble, honey. Financial trouble. We thought this was the only way out. The only way out." I choked, my voice trembling with anger. "Do you have any idea what you put me through?" My dad shook his head, guilt etched across his features. "We never meant for you to find out. We just wanted a fresh start." A fresh start? Without me? Tears streamed down my face, the weight of their betrayal sinking in. "I thought you were dead. I mourned you." They stammered out more excuses, but I couldn't hear them anymore. My mind was spinning as they hurried to their car and sped away, leaving me crumpled on the asphalt, my world shattered all over again. I fumbled for my phone and called Aunt Sarah, barely able to get the words out through my sobs. She rushed over and held me tightly as I wept. "I had suspicions," she admitted later, gently stroking my hair. "There were things that didn't add up, but I never had proof." I wiped my eyes. "What do we do now?" Aunt Sarah's gaze hardened. "We find out the truth. All of it." That's how we ended up hiring Jack, a no-nonsense private investigator with a reputation for uncovering even the deepest secrets. "It won't be easy," he warned us, his eyes serious. "People who go to these lengths to disappear cover their tracks well." "I don't care," I said firmly. "I need to know why they did this. Why they left me." Jack set off to dig into my parents' deception, while I tried to focus on school. But it was impossible. My entire life felt like a lie, and I was determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. Weeks passed, and I barely slept. Then, one evening, Jack called with news. His voice was steady, but the words felt like a punch to the gut. "Your parents used forged death certificates," he explained. "They had help from a lawyer named Maxwell Green, a real shady character." I gripped the phone tighter. "Where are they now?" "They've been living in Evanston under the names Brian and Helen Carter," Jack continued. "Working odd jobs, keeping a low profile. They've been close this whole time." My stomach churned at the revelation. They'd been right under my nose. Aunt Sarah squeezed my hand. "Do you want to confront them?" I nodded, my throat tight. "I need answers." We arranged to meet at a park, neutral ground. When I saw them approach, nervous and older than I remembered, a flood of emotions hit me like a tidal wave. "Aria, sweetheart," my mom began. "Don't," I cut her off, my voice cold. "Just tell me why." My dad let out a heavy sigh. "We were in debt. Bad investments, credit cards. We felt trapped." "So you abandoned your daughter." Aunt Sarah's voice was ice. Mom's eyes filled with tears. "We thought you'd be better off without us dragging you down. We never wanted to hurt you." "Better off?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "I was alone. I thought you were dead." "We're so sorry," my dad pleaded. "We know we can never make it right, but please, can you forgive us?" I stared at them, struggling to reconcile the people standing before me with the parents I had loved and lost. But they weren't the same. They were strangers now, wearing my parents' faces. "No," I whispered, my voice shaking. "I can't." As Aunt Sarah and I walked away, leaving them calling after us, I felt hollow. Like the last remnants of my past had crumbled into dust. The next few weeks were a blur. My grades plummeted. I couldn't focus, couldn't sleep. Everything felt meaningless. "Aria, is everything all right?" Dr. Patel, my academic advisor, asked during our meeting. The concern on her face was enough to break me. I broke down, telling her everything. She listened, her eyes filled with compassion. "I'm so sorry you're going through this," she said gently. "Let's work out a plan to get you back on track, okay?" With her help, I got extensions on my assignments and set up a study schedule. It wasn't easy, but it gave me something to focus on, something to keep me grounded as the rest of my life spiraled. My friends rallied around me too. Zoe and Kevin practically moved into our dorm, armed with junk food, bad movies, and endless support. They made me laugh, even when I felt like I never would again. I wasn't okay yet, but at least I wasn't alone. And for now, that was enough. We've got your back, Aria, Zoe said one night as we huddled on my bed, her arm wrapped around my shoulder. Whatever you need, Kevin added, nodding. We're not going anywhere. Unlike some people I could mention, I managed a weak laugh. It felt good to know I wasn't alone, despite everything. Then my phone rang. It was Jack. Aria, I found something else, he said, his voice grim. Your parents, they've been involved in serious financial crimes. Tax evasion, insurance fraud. My heart sank. How bad are we talking? Bad enough for jail time if the authorities find out. I sat there in stunned silence. The weight of the revelation pressed down on me, the anger, the betrayal. Then a thought surfaced. What if someone tipped off the authorities? Anonymously? Jack paused. That would definitely set things in motion. Are you sure that's what you want? I hesitated, thinking of the sleepless nights, the tears, the lies, the life I had to rebuild on my own. The struggle, the pain, the loneliness. Yes, I said finally, my voice steady. It's time they face the consequences. That night, I sent an anonymous email to the authorities detailing everything Jack had uncovered. As I hit send, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Whatever happened next, I knew one thing for sure. I was done being a victim of my parents' choices. It was time to take control of my own life. As graduation day approached, I poured myself into my work. Between classes and my internship at the Chicago Tribune, I barely had time to breathe, let alone think about my parents. Aria, these articles are fantastic, my editor Jim said one afternoon. Have you thought about staying on after graduation? I blinked in surprise. Are you offering me a job? Jim grinned. Entry level. But yes, you've got real talent, kid. I left the office that day feeling like I was walking on air. Finally, something was going right. Graduation day dawned bright and clear. As I donned my cap and gown, I felt a mixture of pride and disbelief. I'd made it, despite everything. You ready for this, valedictorian? Zoe asked, adjusting my tassel with a grin. I took a deep breath. As ready as I'll ever be. As I waited to give my speech, I scanned the crowd. Aunt Sarah was there, beaming. So were Kevin and my other friends. But then my heart stopped. In the back row, I saw them, my parents. Before I could process their presence, there was a commotion. Two men in suits approached them, flashing badges. George and Linda Johnson, one said, "You're under arrest for tax evasion and insurance fraud." I watched, stunned, as my parents were led away in handcuffs, protesting loudly. Aria Johnson, the dean, called. It was time for my speech. I approached the podium, my hands shaking slightly. Fellow graduates, honored guests, I began, my voice steadying. Today we celebrate not just our academic achievements, but our perseverance in the face of adversity. As I spoke about integrity and resilience, I felt the weight lifting off my shoulders. I was no longer defined by my parents' actions. I was my own person, forging my own path. After the ceremony, Aunt Sarah hugged me tightly. I'm so proud of you, sweetie. In the weeks that followed, the full extent of my parents' crimes came to light. They were facing significant jail time and hefty fines. Maxwell Green, their shady lawyer, was disbarred. The insurance company they had defrauded came after them with a vengeance. Despite the closure, I still felt unsettled. That's why, when the Tribune offered to transfer me to their New York office, I jumped at the chance for a fresh start. You sure about this? Kevin asked as he helped me pack. I nodded. I need a change of scenery. Besides, Aunt Sarah's moving there too for her new job. Zoe handed me a box. Just promise you'll visit, okay? New York was a whirlwind, new job, new apartment, new therapist to help me process everything. Slowly but surely, I started to heal. One day, my editor called me into his office. Aria, that series you wrote on financial fraud? It's gone national. People are calling for reforms. I smiled, thinking of the anonymous sources I cultivated. People like me, affected by financial crimes. That's great news. As I left work that day, my phone buzzed with a news alert. George and Linda Johnson face additional charges for newly uncovered fraudulent schemes. I paused on the busy sidewalk, letting the information sink in. Then I put my phone away and kept walking. Their story wasn't my story anymore. I had my own path now, advocating for students struggling with college expenses, shining a light on financial crimes, building a life I could be proud of. Whatever came next, I knew one thing for sure. I was ready to face it head on with integrity and strength. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had made me who I am. And you know what? I wouldn't change that for anything. Hey everyone, I'm Sarah Johnson. I used to live in Chicago with my parents and my younger brother, Mark. We've always been a tight-knit family, and one thing we all treasure is an antique diamond necklace that's been passed down from our great-grandmother. It's a piece of our history, and we're all proud of it. But lately things have been off with Mark. Ever since he started dating Vanessa, he's been going overboard trying to impress her. Fancy dinners, designer clothes, you name it. It's like everything else in his life has taken a backseat. One night, I was relaxing in the living room when Mark walked in, dressed to the nines. Heading out again, I asked. Yeah, taking Vanessa to that new sushi place downtown, he replied. I raised an eyebrow. Did he just buy new sneakers yesterday? He shrugged. So what? I work hard. I deserve to treat myself, and Vanessa. I muttered under my breath, but he ignored me and left. Feeling uneasy, I called my best friend, Emily. I'm worried about Mark, I told her. He's spending money like there's no tomorrow. Maybe it's just a phase, Emily suggested, though I wasn't so sure. Something felt off. Later that night, Dad called the family into the living room. His face was pale, and Mom's eyes were red from crying. I got some news, Dad began, his voice shaky. The doctor found something. I need treatment, and it's going to be expensive. The room fell silent. Then Mark broke the tension. What about the necklace? We could sell it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you serious? That's our family heirloom. Mom shook her head firmly. No, Mark, we're not selling it. It means too much. Trying to ease the tension, I offered, I'll pick up extra work. We'll figure something out. But Mark just shrugged and went back to texting, completely unfazed. In the following weeks, I worked nonstop. But Mark continued living his high life, going out with Vanessa every night. Then one evening, I overheard him on the phone in the hallway. Yeah, I know I need cash fast. Don't worry, I've got something valuable lined up. My stomach dropped. He couldn't be talking about the necklace, could he? Later, I confronted him. Mark, what's going on? You've been acting really strange. Mind your own business, Sarah, he snapped. This family is my business, I shot back. If you're in trouble. I'm fine, he yelled, storming off. I stood there, a knot forming in my stomach. Something was seriously wrong, and I had a feeling our family was about to be thrown into chaos. Little did I know how right I was. After that, I couldn't shake the suspicion that Mark was up to something. His talk of needing money, the vague references to something valuable. It didn't take much to connect the dots. So I decided to take matters into my own hands. I bought a small hidden camera and placed it in the living room, right near where we kept the necklace. Maybe it was overkill, but I was desperate. A few nights later, while I was working late, my phone buzzed with an alert. The camera had caught movement. I opened the app, and my heart nearly stopped. There was Mark in the middle of the night, taking pictures of the necklace and measuring it with a ruler. I couldn't sleep after that. The next morning, I rushed to check the necklace, and my worst fear was confirmed. It was gone. I replayed the footage, and there it was. Mark, pocketing the necklace at 2 a.m. I confronted him in the kitchen. Where's the necklace, Mark? He looked at me like I was crazy. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. I saw you take it last night. His face flushed with anger. You've been spying on me? What's wrong with you? What's wrong with me? You stole our family heirloom. I fired back. Mom walked in, looking confused. What's going on? Mark turned to her, playing innocent. Sarah's lost it, Mom. She's accusing me of stealing the necklace. Because you did. I have proof. I shouted. Mom looked between us, bewildered, as Dad entered the room. Soon the whole family was caught in a shouting match. Mark kept denying everything, calling me paranoid. Why would I steal from my own family? He yelled. To impress your girlfriend, maybe? I snapped. But in the end, nothing was resolved. My parents didn't want to believe that Mark could do such a thing, and without showing them the footage, which would open a whole other can of worms, I couldn't prove it. I called Emily, nearly in tears. Em, I need your help. Mark stole the necklace, I'm sure of it. Oh my God, Sarah. What do you want me to do? Can you help me check pawn shops, jewelry stores? He must have sold it somewhere. Over the next few days, Emily and I called every pawn shop in Chicago, searching for the necklace. Finally, we got a hit. A shady place downtown remembered seeing a necklace that matched our description. The owner, Tony, agreed to meet us. When we arrived, his shop was exactly what I expected: small, rundown, and sketchy. Tony eyed us warily. Yeah, I remember that piece. Beautiful antique. The kid who sold it seemed desperate. My heart raced. How much did you give him for it? I asked. Tony named a price that made me wince. It was way below the true value of the necklace. Any chance you still have it? Emily asked hopefully. Tony shook his head. Sold it to a collector already. Sorry, ladies. As we left, I spotted Mark across the street, standing next to a shiny new car with Vanessa hanging on his arm. My blood boiled as I overheard him bragging. Check out my new ride. Family inheritance. Pretty sweet, huh? Vanessa squealed and hugged him. Oh my God, babe, it's amazing. I clenched my fists, piecing everything together. He'd sold our priceless family heirloom to buy that flashy car, just to impress her. I wanted to march over and expose him right then and there. But without solid proof, it would be my word against his. And right now, Mark had everyone fooled. Emily placed a hand on my shoulder. We'll figure this out, Sarah. He can't get away with this. I nodded, already forming a plan. Mark might think he's won, but he had no idea what was coming. This wasn't over, far from it. Determined to get to the bottom of things, I set up another meeting with Tony, this time alone. I know you already sold the necklace, I said, getting straight to the point. I'm not here to buy it back. I just need to know more about the sale. Tony looked uncomfortable. I don't usually talk about this stuff. I leaned in, lowering my voice. The guy who sold it, he's my brother. He stole it from our family. Tony's eyes widened. I had a feeling something was off with that kid, he muttered. After a long pause, he sighed and gave in. All right, I'll tell you what I know. Turns out, Mark had been practically begging Tony to buy the necklace, desperate for cash. Kept saying he needed the money fast, like his life depended on it, Tony said, shaking his head. Then, to my surprise, he pulled out some paperwork. Here's the sale record. I shouldn't be doing this, but family's important, you know? I thanked him, my mind racing. This was a huge break, but I needed more. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I hired a private investigator. A week later, the PI called me. Miss Johnson, you might want to sit down for this. What he told me made my blood run cold. Mark hadn't just stolen the necklace. He'd been embezzling from his workplace and opening credit cards in our parents' names, maxing them out. It was a web of lies and theft, and I was reeling. How could my own brother do this? That night, I overheard Mark and Vanessa arguing in the driveway. But babe, I thought we were going to Cancun next month, Vanessa whined. I just need a little more time to get the money together, Mark stammered. You always say that. What about that inheritance? Can't you just sell something else? She snapped. I clenched my fists, listening to Mark struggle to keep up his facade. I'm working on it, okay? Just give me some time, he pleaded. After Vanessa stormed off, I saw Mark pull out his phone and start Googling. How to sell house without owners knowing. My heart sank. He wouldn't, would he? I knew I had to act fast. Using a burner phone, I called his workplace. Hello, I have information about employee theft you might want to look into, I said, keeping my voice steady. Next, I contacted the credit card companies, anonymously reporting the fraudulent accounts. With every call, I felt a mix of relief and dread. The wheels were in motion, and Mark's house of cards was about to collapse. Not long after, my parents found out the truth. They were devastated, angry, heartbroken. We've lost so much, my father said quietly, barely able to look at me. Mark's trial came and went, and he received his punishment. Justice, as they say, took its course. As for Vanessa, she found another man to latch onto, wasting no time moving on. A part of me felt guilty. He was my brother, after all. But then I remembered the look on Mom's face when she realized the necklace was gone. Dad's stress over the mounting medical bills. And how Mark had lied to all of us without a second thought. No, he brought this on himself. Sometimes you have to be cruel to be kind. And in this case, the kindness was for the rest of my family. I went to bed that night knowing tomorrow everything would change. Mark's perfect little world was about to come crashing down, and honestly, I couldn't wait to see it happen. But that's the end of my story. Now, I've got a question for all of you. If you were in my shoes, would you have exposed your own brother's crimes? It's not an easy choice, balancing family loyalty with doing what's right. Was I justified in bringing Mark down, or should I have tried to handle it privately within the family? What would you have done differently? Do you think there's ever a point where someone's actions become unforgivable, even if they're family? Does Mark deserve a second chance, or was this level of betrayal too much to overcome? How would you have confronted him if you were me? And what about the law? Was it okay for me to break it by using a hidden camera to uncover a greater wrong? What do you think drove Mark to betray his family like this? Was it just greed, or something deeper? If you were in my parents' shoes, could you ever trust Mark again? Were there warning signs I missed, things that could have prevented this from spiraling out of control? Was selling the family heirloom the ultimate betrayal, or was it the fraud against our parents that crossed the line? How do you think this experience will affect our family in the long run? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below. Thanks for following along with my story, and if you enjoyed it, stay tuned for more.